Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. We're back live again. We were having some technical difficulties, but we are going to still round out the show here with what we do still have. And I want to dive into at least some initial thoughts here on the NBA Summer League. Again, I understand that this is something that goes over just about a lot of people's heads in terms of their actual interest level in the summer league. So we won't, talk your ear off about it all summer long, but it is something that is pretty interesting to me. And last night, I thought we actually got, an awesome experience in the game that we saw between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Utah Jazz. And those aren't necessarily franchises that jump off the page in terms of level of excitements, but I still thought it was very interesting because you look at the starting fives for both of these teams, plus some of the first players off of the bench, and these are legitimately players we're going to see get real minutes this season. For the Grizzlies, former first-round pick Jake LaRavia, Gigi Jackson, who was just on an all-rookie team last year, Zach Edey, who they just took in the first round this year, Jalen Wells, who was their draft pick for them this year as well, and Scottie Pippen Jr., who got playing time for them last year. At least, keep in mind they were dealing with a lot of injuries, but even still. And then there was also Cam Spencer, the UConn guard, who was a very big part of their national championship run, who I thought looked really good last night too, and somebody that I've definitely had stock in. So you got a number of prospects there. And then for the Jazz, 10th overall pick Cody Williams, Taylor Hendricks, who was a top 10 pick for them last year, Walker Kessler, who I was shocked was actually playing this game. He was drafted 2 years ago now in the first round, was all rookie, and is a pretty established player, and we'll get into him very shortly here as well. Bryce Sensabaugh, first round pick a couple years ago, and Keontae George, who was all rookie last season as well. Plus, they have a couple other draft picks that they took this year, and Isaiah Collier and Kyle Filipowski that both played as well. So, ended up being a very good game, went to overtime. And I tuned in because I was just fascinated about the idea of Zach Edey and what does he look like on an NBA floor. And ultimately, he looked pretty good. Now, keep in mind, obviously, lesser level of competition that you have to factor in here. But 14 points, 15 rebounds, 4 blocks, and ended up having just one of the most physically dominant plays you'll see. And keep in mind, again, a level below, but this is still professional basketball. And the fact that he was able to go up in his first ever NBA action against Walker Kessler, who is a very, very talented defensive big, and also Kyle Filipowski, was a really good experience for him. He actually had a chance at a putback dunk with, about 5-10 seconds left that didn't go. And it seemed like that was going to be the opportunity that got out of hand for him. I was feeling really bad for him. But then series of events here where the Jazz shot some free throws. They then intentionally fouled while up by 3, which is something that, especially in the playoffs this past year, we heard so many people screaming about. You have to always do this. And there was, of course, the Tyrese Maxey play in that series against the 76ers. And Edey, he bull rushed Walker Kessler, who was boxing him out. Kyle Filipowski was trying to get a hand on him as well to slow him down. And Edey just barreled his way to the basket off the release. The Grizzlies intentionally missed the free throw. And then Edey was able to get the putback. And it was a crazy moment. And I do think that, if you want to look big picture with Edey here, there were moments in this game that you could come away feeling like there is going to be a mismatch issue there. He was put in a good amount of defensive action in the pick and rolls and getting caught in middle ground that, when you're talking about the Jazz's summer league team, they weren't necessarily able to punish the Grizzlies and Edey in that same way. And that's something that is going to be an issue for Edey. But go to that tip-in that he had at the end of the game, he's massive and he's very much talented. You saw him able to take Walker Kessler in the post with, his drop steps and hook shots, and, they're not things that you're going to be building an offense around by any means, but he's doing this against a legitimate 7-footer in the league. Talk about if Edey ends up getting, mismatches, he's going to be able to make NBA players pay for it. And I thought he really well demonstrated that last night when he was facing off against, again, some legitimate big men who are going to get minutes in the NBA next season. So all in all, this was a very entertaining game. Like I mentioned, though, I was surprised to see that Walker Kessler was actually getting minutes in this game. And I was texting with a friend of mine about this Edey performance because he's not really a believer in him. And he said that his biggest surprise was that Kessler was playing in this game as well. And then almost immediately after, I got a notification from Bleacher Report that the Jazz are reportedly shopping Kessler and looking for a potential first-round pick. So this feels like a move for them where they are actually trying to showcase him a little bit and maybe doing it against a little bit worse competition in the Summer League. But still a very interesting, factor here that, because it's not often, I feel like, that we see third-year players, especially ones that have shown that they're more than capable of playing NBA minutes in the Summer League. And I'm always for, I said this, a couple days ago, that I'm always for giving players, extra experience and actual game action. But caught me off guard. But, the Knicks are a team that are potentially interested in him. So, something to think about if you are just sort of bored on these summer nights without football or basketball. I mean, Walker Kessler is a potential option that could be on the move. You also look at the New Orleans Pelicans, who are in need of a center. That's probably a pretty low-cost player for the Pelicans, who need to bring somebody in. Right now, Yves Missi, their first-round pick from this past year, is the only option that they have in terms of bigs right now. Losing Valanciunas in free agency and then trading Larry Nance in that deal with the Atlanta Hawks, that, just something to keep an eye on. But again, ultimately, the results of this game in particular, again, nobody's going to be thinking about this probably a week from now, but I thought it was really interesting to see. And some other, various thoughts. I'll also give the fact that Ousmane Dieng for the Oklahoma City Thunder, he was the pick right before Jalen Williams in the 2022 draft, and he actually looked pretty decent as well. But to wrap this all up, because again, don't want to go too long here on the Summer League, is just some brief Lakers thoughts on Dalton Knecht and Bronny James. Bronny, there's really not much to talk about there. He was 2 of 9 from the field. I mentioned this before. He was getting himself open, which is something that, as an on-ball player, considering his size especially, he is going to have to be able to actually beat players off the dribble if he's ever really going to be all that impactful, I would think, at least. Now, we see some short players carve out roles for themselves without being, primary creators themselves, but was, and definitely a lot to work on there for Bronny, but some encouraging things there. And then Dalton Knecht, not a super impressive offensive game either, but at least for him, I think that he's held up pretty well on defense so far, which is definitely going to be a significant part of the conversation as to whether or not he actually gets minutes for the Lakers this year, because that was one of his bigger concerns as he was heading into Tennessee last season, and it got better throughout the course of the year under Rick Barnes as a head coach. And now we are going to, I think, see him, buying in even more on that defensive side where he's not asked to do as much offensively. So I'd say, generally speaking, a little bit of positive notes there. But we are going to be diving into our last segment of the day here. Got to wrap this thing up before the baseball show starts up. But I just want to run through some of the top prospects that will be in college basketball for the 2025 season that I'm looking forward to seeing the most. So we're going to be diving into all of that. Stick with us. We will be right back after this quick break. Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast for our final segment of the day, where we are still, about 4 months away from the start of the college basketball season. But as we are seeing all of, these young players head into the summer league, and really the motivation for me of making this was the fact that Cooper Flagg was selected for the USA Select team and did pretty well for himself in his first scrimmage against the team. I want to look ahead and dive into the players that are going to be most exciting to see next season. So, like I just mentioned, Cooper Flagg, this past year we were sort of without a consensus number one guy for college basketball and for the draft, and Cooper Flagg is going to be that and more. I am super in on him as a prospect. Again, the clips came out of him scrimmaging against the team, and it had me really fired up to watch him. And, being able to have that type of those ball skills at that size, having the two-way ability that he does, he's going to be, pretty much must-watch TV, and someone that I think is going to be massive for the sport of college basketball, where we haven't really had, I would say, true star power in college basketball. Now, there are names, if you're into college basketball, that you are absolutely familiar with. I mean, Zach Edey was the biggest player in college basketball, but obviously was very polarizing and didn't exactly play the most aesthetically appealing games, so his popularity level really wasn't where it should have been. And then, you have your Caleb Loves, your RJ Davises that are, veterans that have been in a lot of big moments, but at the same time, again, it just doesn't necessarily feel like it has that type of grasp on national media. But you get this, 6'7", 6'8", point forward in Cooper Flagg that is, going to Duke University of all places. I think he's going to be, borderline must watch, and is going to try and help, ignite the excitement for, again, the casual audience in college basketball once again. There's the other player as well that they have. I'm totally going to mispronounce this, and I apologize from the jump here, but it's like Carmen Malach or something. Malach, again, I know I probably got that wrong, but somebody that I was recently put onto the radar for me. interesting because he is, viewed as the top prospect to ever come out of Africa's NBA Academy, which I think is its whole other kind of conversation to see if we start to have these success stories. And I love that it's going from the academy into college basketball as well, because I think it's just another way. I don't know. I'm all about the international growth of the game, and I think it's really cool that we're getting, a prospect that could very easily be a lottery pick next year to sort of come up in those academies. There's a couple that for the NBA. They have the one in Australia as well that a number of players graduated from. But getting to see this sort of in college is going to be really exciting for me. VJ Edgecombe from Baylor University is somebody that I'm definitely looking forward to seeing as well. We've seen a number of Baylor guards the past couple years go in the first round. It's Keontae George in 2023, Jacoby Walter last season, Davion Mitchell was a lottery pick in 2021, and Edgecombe, I'm just fascinated with the physical tools that he has. Just an extremely fun, prospect from an athleticism standpoint. Very explosive. I'm curious to see, obviously, there's going to have to be a consistency of shooting there. That is going to have to develop. I mean, you can make some comparisons to probably Jacoby Walter from last year to some degree, but I would say with even, higher upside in terms of being an athlete. And I'm a fan of Jacoby Walter as well, so I don't mean any disrespect to him. I just think that Edgecombe is going to be a very, very fun prospect to watch next year. And, Scott Drew we'll see how we can help him out with that. Walter struggled a little bit to find that consistency, ended up falling to 19th in the draft, which I think is a pretty good value pick for the Raptors there, but we'll see. Liam McNeely, UConn lands another top 10 recruit to add to their, journey here of trying to pull off the improbable and winning 3 straight national championships. We have seen Hurley and UConn be able to put a few players in the lottery the past couple seasons as well. Of course, Stephon Castle and Donovan Clingan last year, both going in the top 7. 2023, it was Jordan Hawkins, who had a profile that was built off of being a sharpshooter, and I feel like that's probably a little bit of a similar role that McNeely is going to fall into at UConn this year as well, where they already sort of have on-ball guys and, lead scorers in place, but McNeely is going to be probably one of, if not the biggest X factor for UConn this upcoming season. And I would like to think as well, McNeely knows what he's getting himself into after watching Stephon Castle last year, who, similar to McNeely, was, one of the top prospects coming out of high school basketball, and understanding that you're stepping into a program in UConn that has very high expectations and that winning is prioritized above all else. And McNeely doesn't strike me as a scorer that is going to be selfish. I think he's going to fall into his role very well. And I think that, as long as the 3-point shot is there, which I have faith in, he is probably going to be a lottery pick in 2025 as well. And then last couple names I want to highlight here, at least from the freshman class, are Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, the duo that is going to Rutgers, which, I want to see Rutgers sort of pop onto the scene here. They've been flirting around with, building up a little bit more of a reputation with getting some top prospects in the building. And, Ace Bailey in particular, who for a lot of people is seen as the number 2 prospect only behind Cooper Flagg in next year's draft. But seeing the way that the two of them are able to put it together, Dylan Harper is someone that isn't quite as well known, but with his size and his shooting, I feel like that he kind of, and again, we're still very limited here in terms of the actual experience that we've seen in big moments, but I don't know. I could see him being a little bit of a similar college player, at least, to what Brandon Miller was at Alabama. and I'm looking to see whether or not he's able to capitalize there, because these are two recruits that are definitely in the conversation for, being top 10 NBA prospects for next year. And, as we talk this out, obviously we know that we're still a year away, but, just something to consider at least. And then I'll throw out a couple names here for some non-freshman players that are probably, I think considering how weak the 2024 class was in terms of freshman talent, we're probably not going to see too many upperclassmen sort of breaking onto the scene and competing with these younger players for the top spots in the NBA draft. But just a couple players here that I do want to highlight in terms of could they, turn some heads next year. Caleb Foster was a top 25 prospect last year for Duke, but he ended up having a stress fracture in his ankle that ended his season early in just February. And it was a limited sample size for Foster last year, but he shot 40% from 3 on 2.5 attempts per game. Again, something that probably going to have to see him have a bigger sample size in order to sort of, again, break out the same way with all of this new freshman talent that's coming in. But a name to keep in mind with as well, because especially if he can, take advantage of the opportunities alongside these two other star freshmen that are coming in, you can feel really good about the Duke core that they have in play. Kind of a personal favorite here is Baba Miller of Florida State. You look at a player who has the physical tools of someone who would be exactly what NBA franchises want. Crazy length with him with a three-point shot. I was definitely disappointed. He was somebody that I was really high on coming into last season, and I saw the flashes, but the consistency wasn't necessarily there. But again, if you see him on a basketball court, he's definitely what NBA scouts want in a player, with the ability to play defense, have size, and, extend his range out as well. Somebody to keep in mind with as well. And then last name here I'm going to throw out there is Aaron Bradshaw. Was a top 5 high school recruit going into Kentucky last year. He was dealing with injuries during training camp and during the first month of the season, and he just never really got consistent playing time. And Kentucky was, a collection of a lot of young players for the most part. And it was clear, obviously, with Calipari, too, knew that there was something weird going on between him and Kentucky, and the way that, he's been one of the best recruiters of the past decade or so, but he was trying to lean a little bit more into the experienced players on the roster. I wouldn't say to protect his job necessarily, because, he was on a guaranteed contract, that a buyout was necessary in order for, I would say that, Kentucky, they were never going to just straight up fire him. I think that if Arkansas didn't come in with their job offer for Cal, that he would still be back at Kentucky, considering the amount of money it would have cost the program to let go of him. But, all that to be said, Bradshaw kind of got buried last year, but I think that he's somebody, and his percentages wouldn't back it up. More of an eye test thing for me, but somebody that I do think is going to be able to, shoot the three from a 7-footer. Somebody that, again, I think his percentages were somewhere along 25%, so not very promising by any means. But, transferred to Ohio State this offseason, and, Ohio State trying to build up something new. Bradshaw could be a little bit of a focal point for that offense, for that organization. Again, if he can just find the consistency, I think if he finds the three-point shot, that automatically is going to put him in some conversations. But, just being able to stay on the court, be just reliable in the post, I think he has the frame, the physical tools, everything, that I'm not worried about him defensively. What's going to put him over the edge is the ability to, space out the floor as well. But, so many names that I sort of excluded from this list as well. We only had 12 minutes to talk about it. Again, this freshman class is deep. So really looking forward to, I think this is going to be, one of the more notable college basketball seasons that we've had in sometimes in terms of the national attention. I think there's going to be a little bit of, people are starved from it because, again, as much as college basketball, it was a great year last year, but it was kind of a clear runaway favorite in UConn, and there really weren't all that many top draft prospects that were popping off the screen for a lot of players, and I think that that's what we're going to get this year. But let me know who you're most excited to see next year in college basketball. That is all the time we have for the show today. Remember to like, follow, subscribe wherever you keep up with us. Check us out on social media as well for more exclusive short content, and we will be back tomorrow afternoon, same time as always, 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern. We will see you then. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that